is at this intersection of both, and felt like the right path for me. And so after figuring that out, I went to New York to do a short kind of condensed 2-year design degree, which gave me the foundation that I needed to land my first job. If you wouldn't mind just clicking. Um, Thank you, Sophie. So yeah, that kind of gave me a small portfolio, but one that was enough to land me my first job, which was brand side at Clinique, which is the skincare brand. And I was there for 1 to 2 years as kind of a digital designer, but doing a little bit of everything. So kind of working on web pages to emails to social media graphics to cropping photos and kind of sketching out photos that they would then go off to shoot, which was an amazing first job and an amazing experience. Worked with some really incredible people there that came from a magazine background, but that attention to detail when it comes to typography and composition, I learned all of that from them. So yeah, I have a lot of respect and loyalty to the team there. But I was there for 1 to 2 years, and then I moved agency side. And I was agency side for a couple of years, most notably at Pentagram. And there I kind of learned all about brand identities, brand systems. I kind of, and during those 2 to 3 years at agencies, was also when I kind of transitioned into being a motion designer full time for a bit. Um, so while at Pentagram, I was trying to kind of feed motion into projects everywhere I could. Um, which led me to wanting to pursue it full time. And so I did do that for a while and worked with some incredible motion designers at a kind of a motion focused studio. Um, but then that also meant that I still wasn't feeling fully satisfied because although I love the motion aspect, I kind of missed being able to contribute to the visual side of things, like having a say in the typography, having a say in sort of how we style illustration or photography. And so that it led me to freelancing. If you click again on the slide and again. Um, so yeah, now I've been freelancing for 2 to 3 years, and I've gone back to work with some of my old companies, but I've also gotten to work with lots of incredible new clients as well, ranging from tech to sport, and so on and so forth. If we go to the next page, this is a snapshot of some of my client-focused work. Yeah, got to work with McLaren, one of the F1 teams, on some kinetic typography there. There's some beauty in there with Clinique, and then there are some kind of nice motion bits for some tech brands and companies. But I think overall with my work, I like to explore this intersection between something that feels really clean and refined and almost minimal, and how that contrasts with something that feels a bit more textural and experimental and gritty. And if you go on to the next page, please. This is a page full of kind of my little side experiments, my little tests, personal projects, whatever you want to call it. These experiments and sort of personal projects have been like quite important to my growth as a designer, but also to my career as a freelancer, which I can talk a little bit about further on. But I think it's a great way to kind of figure out your own taste and your style, and also kind of a way to broaden your portfolio. And then if we go on to the next page, some of the biggest challenges I've had in my career so far have been switching careers and then also having to deal with imposter syndrome as off of the back of that. And then if you click again, my biggest piece of advice for people wanting to get into motion design or people who are kind of at the start of their careers is to obviously do like the client projects are so important, but on the side, definitely keep experimenting and learning new tools and doing personal projects, because I think it's really important to kind of stay curious and to keep pushing your own personal growth when it comes to design and motion. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. And last but not least, Dan.
Okay. Sorry, I was totally just like thinking about what Shirley said there and I was just completely taken away with it. It's such a great lineup of people. I'm going to do like a little whistle stop of where I came from, when I re-educated myself, and then where I'm at now. So I'm Dan. I'm a senior motion designer working for Human After All, who are also a B Corp organisation. We're based in London and we work with messaging, marketing, branding, a whole bunch of stuff. And we work with tech companies, NGOs, a real nice mixture of stuff, which is like high-paying, like big tech companies, and then like really humble, NGOs that are really kind of doing some great stuff in the world. My background might not be the same as everybody else. I think it might come as a bit of a surprise, but if we go to the next slide, my background started in dance. So from the age of 3, I went to the same dance school, theatre school, that my brother and sister were at, and then I was in that from the age of 3 up till the age of 33. So did that for a really long time, trained professionally. I did ballet, tap, jazz, a life that was filled with performance and great opportunities where I got to experience TV, film, stage, touring. I got to travel the world. It was an incredible part of my life that really kind of informed so much of who I am as a creative. And it kind of got to a point where I was like, at a point where I was either going to step into the more directorial position in theatre, or if I was going to transition into something else. And the deciding factor was that I wanted to sit down. So at the time I was performing and jumping into splits, and I was like, you know what, there's got to be something more healthier on my body than this. So at the time, I was kind of doing a few creative bits and pieces for friends, like designing posters, coming up with sort of like conceptual ideas to help their businesses. And I looked at that and thought, you know what, maybe that's the next step. And at the time, a lot of my work was very illustrated, love illustration, love sketches. And I kind of thought, oh, right, I'll do illustrations. I was then well informed by somebody to be like, if you want to go in this as a next career path, it would probably better for you to study graphic design, because it's a broader course. There's more opportunities for you to pick up new skills that you might not have known about. And that's what I did. Next slide, please. So then I went to college as a immature student, and kind of threw myself into the work. I went to UAL, London College of Communications, and I was hungry at the time, so really just kind of dived in and just like absorbed everything I could, which I think is the opportunity that you get when you're a mature student, because you really are there by choice, and you really are aware of the tuition fees that you're paying. So really kind of lapped up everything, really kind of enjoyed the fundamental creative world that I'd kind of been put in, where I got to study typography, I got to study print, I got to study editorial design, all sorts of things. Like we had like really old fuddy-duddy traditional teachers that taught us like, the fundamentals of graphic design, and was like, oh, from somebody that came from like a ballet background, which is a very traditional like, historical sort of style of dance, which is based on, formation, rigidity and practice. I kind of fed into like kind of the more classical kind of stylings, but then it was such a rich course that you could take into any direction. And there was web design, there was UX design, there was motion, which was a part of it. And I did kind of get involved a little bit without kind of fully knowing how interested I was going to end up being in it. But I think there was something about the ideas of movement and language that started kind of forming as an idea of a direction that I wanted to take. Here is a bunch of stuff, which is kind of what there's illustration, I have like a really strong interest in like design, anything that's to do with like numbers, and it sort of triggers, I think, something, because there's something about music and there's something about numbers and rhythms, and I love patterns, and yeah, so I did a whole load of weird kind of stuff, which I think is what you're supposed to do when you come out of college. And then graduated and threw myself myself into the world of work, where I was just like, I'm a graphic designer, let me just do any graphic design. Had opportunities to work for WaterAid, for other charities, where I was sort of an in-house designer, and then pushed myself into more events-based. And then 4 years ago, had an opportunity to jump into a full-time motion design job. The creative director at the time took a chance on me because I had such a hunger to step into motion design, and it worked out really well. And now I've been, if we go to the next slide, I've been at Human After All now for 4 years, from just over 4 years. And at the time that I'd started, motion design was in-house, but I think I've had such a great opportunity to kind of help scope what motion looks like at Human After All. And since then, our capacity for video production has kind of gradually gotten bigger and bigger, and we've taken on bigger and bigger projects, which have included live shoots, events-based projects, all sorts of bits and pieces. And yeah, there's just a very rich tapestry of work that you get to be involved in. And now in a position where things are kind of taking more of a more leadership position, which is a whole new field of kind of expertise that I'm going to have to kind of learn as I go. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, I'd say. I guess I hand back to you, Zoe.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. Like that's already a really varied picture of what motion design can look like. And yeah, as just echoing the comments, like really inspiring journeys. I really can't wait to dive in, and I'm sure everyone else is very excited to actually kind of get into the nitty-gritty. So before we get into how to build a career in motion, it's great to kind of make sure that everyone's starting on the same page, because there's people here who might already be working in motion, people who are just starting out, and when we, people submitted questions, and one of the most frequent ones we received was, is motion design the same as animation? Like, what is actually motion design? And so my question to the panelists, and you can raise your hand or just jump in, are animation and motion design the same thing? And if not, what's actually the difference? If you need more context, someone actually asked, like, can moving image be motion design? Where do you draw that line? Is there a line? Yeah, go for it, Dan.
I will go ahead, just because I did a little exercise internally at Human After All, where I sort of posed them the same questions similar to this, what are the differences? And from what I kind of understand is that they are kind of the same. Motion design is a made up title that's kind of rooted in the ideas of graphic design and animation, and they've sort of kind of carved out this profession. But I think at the core they kind of hold the same skill set and practice, but I think the output and sort of place that they hold space within graphic design is different. But there are so many similarities, I think, between the two. You can call yourself both and still kind of do similar work. It's kind of my take on it. And I think technically the words like animated means bring to life. So animation and motion are the same thing. There's something in it, and I think it's kind of very much down to interpretation, which isn't really a direct answer.
No, that's great. Tom, I can see you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, I did a similar thing. I asked the guys in the studio, and actually everyone struggled to answer it in a way with consistency. I think of it as two different ways in a way. 5 or 10 years ago, it was a different thing to what it is now, I think. Like, as Dan said, motion design is essentially taking graphic design-led images and moving them across the screen. That's, in essence, that's what it is. But I feel like 5-10 years ago, maybe you had motion design as one kind of discipline. You also had animation, which is kind of, in my mind, like more illustrative, much more kind of obviously like frame by frame or cell led, so it can be a bit more organic. And then other disciplines like VFX and others. But now it feels like motion design is kind of like the umbrella term that all of these disciplines sit underneath. So I feel like motion design is bigger than just what it used to mean. I think it's sort of all encompassing, because we see obviously animation is a big part of motion, but then all of these other disciplines and crossovers, and I know we'll talk about software later, but everything is kind of merging into this bigger remit, which in my mind is the motion design industry. So yeah, I think for me it's definitely changed. I don't know if people totally disagree with that, but
Very interesting. Roger, yeah, go for it. Oh, you're on mute.
I agree with both of these guys. I see it like as kind of as a spectrum a little bit. I guess there is like this avenue of motion design, there's this avenue of motion design, and some of those lean towards what you would think traditional animation is. And some of that leans like very like tech design side. And I don't know, like if my graphic is just like a square on a field of white or something, to give that personality or to personify that or have that, kind of, just again, animation brings something to life and it's just a square. I think it really is all encompassing. It really does like kind of coalesce and everything. And of course, like motion design is so broad, and then you could bring in like kind of practical real world elements into it. You could start like scanning things in, you could do like stop motion and things like that, all the way to like a fully kind of driven mixed media piece that's like mostly like a 3D character rig, but with like through all this compositing and visual effects, like Tom was saying, like ends up becoming what is like you would deem as a motion piece in general. So yeah, it's super blurry, but I think that's a good thing about motion design in general is how broad it is and how many avenues you can go down as far as like access or how you want to express yourself in that space.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, Jade.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of the perspectives. I also just want to add that they overlap, but I also think the intent is different. I think of animation as the craft of bringing things to life, like Dan had mentioned, but in motion design, it's applying that craft to communicate an idea, often within like a system, like a product, a campaign, a brand, or at least maybe that's just because of the space that I'm in. But I feel like all motion uses animation, but not all animation is motion design, is how I see it.
Ooh, very interesting. I feel like that actually leads really perfectly onto my next question, which was, are there places that motion design shows up that people might not expect? We've already seen a range of contexts in your introductions: branding, social, editorial, film. Where might it show up that people don't necessarily expect? Anyone can take this.
Sorry, go ahead, Shirley. If you're ready.
Oh, did it raise? I can't tell from my end. I was gonna say okay, thanks. I was gonna say that I think especially since COVID, a lot, like everything has become digital all of a sudden, and so I think definitely in on websites and apps, even more now. So on social media, there's motion design, animation, kind of in those spaces as well. It's kind of hard to avoid it, actually.
Right. I feel like it's prerequisite to a lot of design and UI UX right now. And then on top of that, I think when I was still in college, I just was blown away that was a job, because it's so ubiquitous in everyday life. Like, it's if you watch like football and then the two helmets like hit each other, and it's like the numbers even updating at the bottom of some, like, for stats, for graphics, for like data viz, for how like players are doing and things like that within a sport, or even when you're at a live venue or at a show or a concert. It's just all of that, those noise and those visuals that you're actually like immersed in, that you're not realizing that that's somebody's job, or like the cheero meter or whatever at a live event, and it's just like, this crowd needs to, this side of the audience is louder than this one, and it's so everywhere. And also, I will say, like, internet is too damn fast now to not have like video and motion. I think still work is still great. I love print all day, but yeah, internet too fast, computers too good, laptop too good, cell phone too good for everything not to be like have video and motion like integration.
Yeah, I
That's a really
think
good point.
because
Yeah,
we're
go for it.
basically living our lives through screens, for better or worse, it's sort of the inevitable evolution, really. So yeah, I think every brand, every piece of advertising, anything you see, really, the engagement goes up if motion's attached to it. So I feel like, yeah, it's just the automatic evolution of what we've built for ourselves.
And it's a compromise for like a lot of people that need advertisements or kind of support, for where you don't want to do a full live action production, but you can do this kind of in between with motion, that feels like just as valuable, or just as kind of clean and prestigious, without like breaking the bank and doing months of like scheduling and talent acquisition and things like that. So
I did want to add, like, I know that we're all harping on like seeing it in digital spaces, and so because we're so attuned to that, seeing it and feeling it in physical spaces is even more engaging. And an example of that is when I was working at Hobbs, they were actually working with drone companies to create drone shows and embedding motion design within those drone shows, and even made a music video using drones. And I think that's a very special and cool way to use the physical world as your canvas, like the sky. That is pretty insane. And for me specifically, that's something that I actually want to get into more in my career, of being able to experience the work that I do that's outside of a digital space or even a case study. So like stage visuals at concerts and music festivals, I think that's also really immersive and exciting to see in the real world.
One more, and also like just like love like video games, like UI UX inside of like menus and like HUDs and like things like that, or even like fake mock like graphics inside of like an action movie or something like that. It's everywhere. Yeah.
Very cool. So, let's get to talking about all these tools that you're using. So many people have been asking about this in the Q&A box today. So what tools are you actually using day to day? And for someone starting out with a limited budget, where would you tell them to begin? We had a question in the Q&A box specifically. When it comes to 3D, what software is mostly being used in industry between Cinema 4D, Houdini, Blender, etc.?
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky because obviously Blender is free, so it's completely understandable why people are picking that up from sort of entry level and just running with it. So, and Blender is getting better every day. But we in the studio, we use C4D and generally Redshift, although sometimes Octane is the render engine. But yeah, we like Cinema. We've been with it for quite a while, but I think more and more as people join us, they particularly people at the beginning of their careers, they're coming to us with experience of Blender because of that, and therefore at some point we're probably going to have to either get used to working in both or maybe even transition over. So yeah, at the moment certainly for 3D it's Cinema 4D, but probably in the future Blender.
Awesome. Roger, did you have a point to add to that?
No, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Mostly a whole bunch of Cinema 4D and Blender, and there's a lot of like free software out there, or like in browser kind of software, like things like Spline. I know like newer editions of After Effects have like more 3D built into them. Honestly, like I'm not the biggest fan of 3D because I'm an instant gratification person, and I'm like, it don't look good instantly. So you know, of course, like full time motion designer has to like know what's going on and be able to like kick some stuff out. But I lean more into the more like kind of simple abstract 3D, which is why I like stuff like Houdini and stuff where it's like amorphous and stuff like that. And as soon as I gotta get like AutoCAD and have like perfect measurements to like recreate like a HP laptop, I'm like miss me completely.
Fair.
But if it leans in that world of like, you know, abstract, textury, like a little more vibes, or just doing weird things with like shifting of light and things like that, definitely more my wheelhouse. But pretty much what Tom said. Right now, it's still cinema and still Blender for the most part. And this and like I don't want to give anyone any bad advice, but when I was early on, I was bootlegging everything, y'all. Until I wasn't. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
do what you can.
No, that's very useful. That's very useful to know. I mean, someone also asked a really honest question. How do you get over the intimidation of learning After Effects or literally any software, really? What would you tell someone who's going through that?
I think I've got two things to say. Firstly, to answer that question, learning any skill does take time. So have patience with yourself. And if you're anything like Roger and I, who want that instant gratification, like you got to have like an extra word with yourself to just calm down. Yeah, like picking up a tool like After Effects, where there's so many panels, there's so many tools, there's so many things you can break. Just go in there and break it, and like be a bit more structured with it, and just keep going. I answered one of the questions in the thing about where's a good place to learn how to use After Effects or just any tool, and I learned a lot of my skills on YouTube and open resources. YouTube is such an incredible resource of just like asking a specific question, and somebody out there's probably answered something similar to it, and it will be in like a 5-10 minute video, which is just my attention span, and you'll get to the points, and you'll become very good at sourcing the right tutorials for you. You'll find the right people that you learn the most from. So that as a skill set I think is really important, regardless of what tool you're looking at. Even if you want to learn 3D, it's the same sort of scenario. There's a lot of open resources out there. Secondly, I want because the question of what tools to use, and I think it is a very relevant question, especially when you're looking to work in this industry. But also there's a part of it that is a consideration that I try and remind myself is to almost be quite critical about what programs I'm investing my time into. The monopoly of the design industry and who owns it and who owns those specific programs, I think I try and keep myself quite critical about what I'm feeding into, because there are a lot of crossovers, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of programs do very similar things. And a lot of programs tend to feed you the idea that they're saving you the time. And in my head, I think you've got to put the time in to understand how to do things from the ground level. So it's worth taking the time to learn how to do things before you pay into the devices that are going to save you all this wizardry and all this time. But then I guess that's probably something that I, as a designer, I like to understand like the fundamental rules about what we're doing before you start breaking things or before you start shortcutting things. Like I'm a bit of a stipulator where it comes to like plugins. I don't like plugins. If you can't make it, you shouldn't use it. But then that's just me.
Right. We had a question in the Q&A box that was sort of talking about specializing, and I wonder, Tom, if you could answer to this. But this person has written, I'm in the UK. I like 2D vectorial motion graphics used in branding and in character animation. It seems though that studios are either branding studios or animation studios. Can I do everything, or do I need to specialize?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, really. I don't know. In my opinion, we don't do a lot of character animation in the studio. We do some. We've done bits in the past, but I think when you started off saying vector 2D animation, I was going to say Cavalry, because Cavalry is great. It's also now free, which is even better. But actually, I mean, I've not seen loads of character work coming out of Cavalry, so I don't want to speak for it. But I wouldn't, if I was rigging a character, I wouldn't go into Cavalry. I'd probably go into After Effects. Yeah, it's a tough one, really. I mean, I think Cavalry is a very different way of thinking than After Effects. The way the node system and the way you plug things in is almost in reverse. So I think there's a slight mindset shift. So to be honest, if I was recommending you learn one tool, it would still probably be After Effects. I love After Effects. I think it's great. I do everything, even designing style frames in After Effects. Just something about the way it works fits my brain. But then kind of going back to what Dan was saying, like the thing with it, and partly the reason why I love motion design is it's all problem solving. So in After Effects, there's 5 different ways to do the same thing. And through experience, you learn which have limitations, which is the right one given a certain situation. So I think that's it. It's trying to understand the capabilities and what you can do, and then picking the right method to solve the challenge that you've got. And that's kind of why I love it, really.
Great. So let's get into talking about the craft of motion design. So someone in the Q&A box has asked about storytelling through motion. They've said, when bringing a brand's identity into motion, how do you communicate its story? And how do you decide on the animation style? What design principles guide those decisions? Quite a good question. Yeah, I mean, for context, how do you create meaning through motion design and not just something that just looks visually interesting? Yeah, go for it, Shelley.
I was gonna say, like, from a brand identity perspective or a branding perspective, I think a lot of it starts from the strategy, and the strategists will come up with kind of the overarching brand idea, and then there will be kind of your brand characteristics or your brand principles. I think what more studios are doing now these days, and I think that's like a big part of principles that then kind of will become the root or the foundation of your motion system. So these 3 or 4 motion principles will basically decide how your logo should animate, how the typography should move, how imagery and illustrations should move. So those are kind of the guiding pillars or the guiding factors, I'd say. So I think that's, at least from a branding perspective, how we imbue motion with meaning.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think it's exactly that. It's like really everything moves now. We're looking at screens all day. So how can you make yourself stand out and differentiate the way that your brand moves? And how do you bring something different and something memorable to the market? And exactly like Shelley said, like I agree with all of that. So
yes, I agree with Shirley. It's strategy driven. It's all the information you have kind of informs how you want it to move, like including who you're talking to, your audience, who everything is geared to incorporate that. And if visuals like kind of are established, then it's kind of easy to you can kind of discern, oh, like this shape language is all sharp and pointy. There's not like anything rounded here. Maybe I'll do something more aggressive. Maybe I'll do something fast. Just kind of like interpreting what you're seeing. Like, does that font even look playful? Does it look like is it serious? Is it crucial? Or is it like full of like levity and kindness and we're slow? You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of it is your interpretation, but it should be backed by the strategy, the marketing, the mission, and those core brand principles.
That's really, really valuable to know, because it shows that there's so much nuance into creating something. It's not just the end result, it's the strategy. Jade, you said working at Buck means you're working on a huge variety of projects for different clients. Can you incorporate your own style or interpretation into client work? Where does that kind of creative freedom live?
Yeah, I think less about injecting a personal style and how I interpret the problem, I guess, is my style. So basically, I realize my style isn't a visual aesthetic, but it's just how I approach problems, and style shows up in the choices that you make. So your style shows up, you know, when you on what you change or the challenge changes, your perspective always stays consistent, and that's what people start to recognize. So a very strong concept driven and strategy based approach is what will hold up the foundation of a design project, and keep it going. And in terms of adding personality, I think it's best to build that into the concept and strategy in advance. So again, it's holding it up as you develop it, because later in the project, it's hard to fake personality. You can always add motion, you can always add design as you go, but if you don't have a firm core foundation of what you're building off of, it just tends to crumble.
Yeah, and for Dan, this is a question for you. How do you develop a style when you're still starting out or figuring out what you're doing? Is that something to aim for at the start?
Style is a really interesting, I think, question, because in my head, I don't know if everyone else feels this way, but I think style is something that I really struggle to kind of identify for myself in my work. Like, I know I can lean towards certain aesthetics. Let's say if it's something that I'm creating for myself, like I paint, I illustrate, I do all of that. I know that there's a certain tone that I like to achieve. But I think when you step into any creative industry, I think you have to be, there's a certain malleable need in order to kind of like achieve success and work with other creatives. You have to be malleable with your style and learn to find opportunities where you can put your interpretation. And I'm not saying like necessarily choice of colors, but it is just kind of like choice of direction. When you work collectively, there's a lot of voices in a room, there's a lot of stakeholders, there's a lot of opinions. So in order to find the sweet spot of where you can find your opportunities, I think is a practice. And it's very much dependent on what your direction is and what your field is, I think. But especially when, in my experience working with brands and stuff, there's such tight constrictions on kind of what you're going to be working on, and your preferences and your style will creep in there, but they will be based on the limited space that you're kind of given over the choices that you get to make. And you might not necessarily see your style, but I think people do see your style. Like, I know that I've worked in motion design stuff and people notice that I lean towards a certain aesthetic. There's a certain easing, I think, that I lean towards because it builds suspense. But I think because I do it on a day-to-day, and because I'm so aware of the restrictions of what I'm working within, I don't necessarily see it. But I don't know if everyone else feels that way. Like, style is a very interesting concept when it comes to like commercial work as a brand, in branding, sorry.
I want to
Yeah,
hear
Roger.
Tom. I just want to hear what Tom has to say about this, because in my head, when you work at like a boutique studio, I feel like it's one of those opportunities where you can dictate style, or you may feel more agency in telling a client like this is what we should do, where maybe at a larger agency where we have a bottom line hit, we're just like, how high, sir? I feel like for me, I'm always presenting options. So it's going to be, this is how I would do it if I own this, and I'm going to do whatever I want. This is what I think you want. And usually it's going to be a Frankenstein of the two, where there's elements of like some of Roger's crazy stuff. And then it's like, well, you didn't tell me to hold on to my helmet and put my seatbelt on. So, slow it down a little, So they're always striking that balance, for sure. Got to keep the clients happy, but yeah, always trying to seize the opportunity to do whatever I want, whenever I want to do it, type thing. And if it doesn't make the cut, it doesn't. But at the end of the day, like, I'm always gonna be like, like this is what's cool right now, grown-ups. Whether they heed that or not. But again, like, you're not going to do the same thing for like a healthcare company as you are going to do for, like a Fitbit like situation. You know, it's always going to be you gotta rise to that specific kind of occasion and cater your, because it's gonna be you anyway, no matter what you do. Some of you is gonna jump out of it, like no matter what. It just depends on like if you see an opportunity to like kind of be like, all right, this is my time. I'm gonna flex on this project. Next project is a pay the bill project. You know.
Mm. Yeah, super valuable insights from all of you so far. I think this is the perfect time to head into a break. So we're going to go for a 5-minute break. Feel free to switch off your cameras, panelists, grab a refreshment, and we'll be back at 6:20 or 6:19 p.m. BST, 1:19, 1:20 Eastern time, or 10:19, 10:20 Pacific time. Great, I'm glad I got all of those correct. See you in 5 minutes.
Awesome. Đăng ký tập edit cái color cái mà nó kiểu không có đậm. Mm. chair. Now is face. Anna Tetter.